You may never have heard of a crispy beef Mochomos taco, but you'll never forget it. Welcome back to my kitchen. Now, the next page in this taco manual that we're creating takes us to Mochomos tacos. It's a crispy beef taco, but outside of the northwestern section of Mexico, it's very little known. I fell in love with it when I visited that section years and years ago, and I started doing it on our restaurant menu, and everybody that ate it was just wild about it. So I'm going to show you how to make those. The first thing that we need to do is to work with beef, and because this is crispy beef and we have to cook the beef first and then shred it, I choose a cut of beef that has really clear strings in it. Okay, so that would be flank steak. So I'm starting with a 3/4 pound piece of flank steak, and I'm going to cut it in half against the grain. Okay, that's really important in this. And then I'm going to put that into a pan with 4 cups of water. That'll be just enough to cover it, so you don't really have to measure that if you don't want to. I'm going to put 1 slice of onion in here, but I'm going to need to grab another knife here because I cut meat with that one. So I'm just going to put a slice of onion like that into the pot along with that. And then here's the hierbas de olor. Anyone that's been to a Mexican market in Mexico has seen little bundles of hierbas de olor, fresh bay leaves with fresh thyme and fresh marjoram. So I'm going to put a little sprig of each of these and 1 or 2 bay leaves in there. I actually like to flavor this broth pretty highly there. A couple of teaspoons now of salt just to help with the seasoning as we're going through this. And then I'm going to bring this to a simmer, just a bare simmer, and let it go until the meat is really tender. That'll take an hour and a half to 2 hours. Okay, I'll admit it. This is the tedious part of this recipe because once the flank steak was really tender, I let it cool down in the broth, and then that just makes it easier to work with. And then started chunk by chunk by chunk, peeling these into very thin shreds. You can see how it is. Now, I will tell you that in a lot of the markets in the northwestern part of Mexico, they're not quite this careful. You could imagine when we put these on the menu in our restaurant, nobody really wants them to be there because everybody has to gather around. So maybe you can gather around some people to help you to do the shredding of it. It goes faster as you work on it, as you start to get your rhythm with it here. I use my thumb in the middle of it and kind of just pull instead of trying to take them off 1 strand at a time. So what you're seeing here represents quite a lot of work. I admit to that. And we got a couple other things that we are going to make to go along with this. One is some crispy onions. You can leave them off, but if you're going to do the next step of this, which is deep frying, might as well fry. This is one of my favorite parts of the Mochomos tacos that we do in our restaurants. I'm going to fry up some very thin slices of onion because the sweetness is really lovely against the flavor of the Mochomos. Okay, I'm calling it quits here with this. I've got one little funny piece over here, so I'm going to just set that to the side. Okay, now the mashed avocado that is going to go with this. I am going to do it very simply. This is not, I don't consider it guacamole, but a lot of people in Mexico would consider it guacamole because we are just going to use a spoon to scoop out, if I can grab hold of it there, scoop out the avocado into a bowl here. And then I'm going to mash that with some very simple seasonings. One of the seasonings that I'm going to put in there is going to be garlic, but I really dislike raw garlic in guacamole, and the reason for that is that it starts taking over, and within an hour or so, the whole thing can taste a lot like garlic instead of avocado. And so I'm going to put this in here for 1 minute. That was 2 cloves of garlic that were covered in water, that's all. And this is my quick way of blanching the garlic so it won't take over this. I'm going to add to the avocado some salt, and I'm going to add a little Mexican oregano to it. Some people would probably prefer to have some cilantro here, but a little bit of Mexican oregano crushed in there I think is really delicious. It makes it taste a little bit different than your typical guacamole would. And of course, just a little bit of squeezed lime juice. In fact, it's going to be so small, I'm just going to squeeze it in just like this. Okay. Now, I'm going to mash this up with an old-fashioned potato masher because I want it sort of coarse. And now the garlic that is going to go in here, remember that this is going to be hot. The bowl itself is going to be hot. And we've blanched it. You open that door and right away you can smell the garlic in there. I'm going to take these guys out and I'm going to show you what the texture of them is. See, they're like completely cooked garlic here. So slice it and then chop it up like that. I use the rock and chop method, back and forth like this. And then we're going to toss that in and we'll come back to that and taste it in just a little bit. And then we'll move on to the crispy onions part of all of this. Now I'll just go right on top. We'll mix it in and taste it in just a minute. So now the onion, I cut a piece of it off earlier. But I'm going to cut this way. And then I'm going to start slicing it thinly this way. If you had one of those mandolins, you could do this on a mandolin. If you feel really comfortable doing thin slicing by hand, you could do that. That will be absolutely plenty for what we're going to need today. And I'm going to break all of the little pieces apart here. And I'm going to salt it about, I'm going to say not even a half a teaspoon will go on those there. And then coat them in flour, just regular all-purpose flour. It doesn't really matter because this is not for a baking recipe at all. But a nice coating of the flour on here. They shouldn't feel wet at all. They should feel quite dry. And now we're ready to go on to the frying. Okay, so all of our hard work is just about to pay off. I have about 1.5 inches of oil. Any kind of oil that you like to fry in. Some of you like canola. I like to use safflower oil that's for high heat. And so that's what I have at my house. About 1.5 inches at 325 degrees. I can't emphasize enough that if you're going to fry things, don't just wing it by guessing how the heat of the oil. Get a digital thermometer like this one. I have one that's got a probe on it that I can look and see exactly what the temperature for the oil is. I've got this at 325 now, so this is going to be the first batch of stuff to go in here, which is the onions, and that's at a lower temperature than we're going to fry the shredded flank steak. So you don't dump it in there all at one time. You kind of let them fall off of your hand into the hot oil, and my temperature's dropped about 10 degrees or so now. Okay. And I'm going to let those cook until I am absolutely sure that the exterior of the onions has set, meaning that little bit of liquid that came out of the onions from the salt and it mixed with the flour. And when I know that that has begun to set, then I'm just going to toss these guys around in here. And I'm going to turn the temperature up just a little bit to bring it back to that 325 degrees. And then when they are beautifully golden, I'll take them out with my little spider skimmer here and pile them onto paper towels. All right, I've got some beautifully browned onions here. Yeah, those look really nice. So I'm scooping those out, kind of spread them a little bit out on the paper towels so that all of the fat, anything that's on the outside, will get absorbed. I want to make sure that I get all of it out of here, because the next thing I'm going to do is to turn the temperature up to get to 350 degrees. So remember, this was at 325. Oh, those look gorgeous. Okay. Now, while they're still warm, I am going to sprinkle them with a little bit of salt. That will help the salt to stick to them uniformly. Okay, now, let's see. Okay, I'm at the right temperature here, and I am going to start to fry the mochomos themselves. A big handful of it is what I'm going to put in here, and I'm going to do the same thing that I did with the onions. I'm just going to let it sort of fall down, cascade down, but you hear that it's sort of crackling. Now, this won't take as long as the onions do to cook, but you have to make sure that you cook them long enough that they're going to be crispy bits here. Now, a lot of times when you go into the market, they will use fryer baskets and just fill it up with that, and they'll just crisp it all, and it's like a brick of these. We don't want that for this. We want to have beautiful sort of loose pieces of the mochomos. It makes it for a more elegant taco, but you could literally put at least half of that in here all at one time and have it be a sort of brick that you break apart when you're making your tacos. Okay, now take a look at this. Our beautiful little pieces of mochomos. And I will make sure that I get back. I got to get 5 degrees more so that I put it in at about 350. And I will just continue to fry batches of the mochomos until all of it is done. Remembering to salt after it comes out so that the salt will evenly be absorbed into the meat. Now to build the taco. We have the avocado mash here. I'm just mixing in the blanched garlic to it, but I need to give it a taste and see if I got enough salt in it. But man, that little bit of Mexican oregano in there, little hint of lime juice, super good. Now I have a bold red chili salsa here. This one's made with arbol, roasted garlic, a little bit of guajillo chili, a little touch of vinegar. It's one of my favorites, but man, this stuff is super bold. So I'm gonna build this taco the way that we do in our restaurants, because we build them in a special way that ensures that every bite is a perfect bite. If you're gonna go to all this work here to make this, then you wanna make sure that it's good. A spoonful of the mash on each one of these tortillas here. I'm going to just spread it out, because that's going to be the base that holds all of this stuff together. So spread the avocado mash on the bottom. Then this is sort of out of order, or the way you think you would put a taco together, but we put the salsa on next, because I want to make sure that there's a little of that in every bite here. And then some of our crispy mochomos goes over that. So pile that here and flatten it just a touch. Stuff is very beefy, crispy, delicious. Okay, and now a bit of the crispy onions to go over the top of each one. And just because we can gild this lily, I'm going to put a little bit of chopped cilantro over the top of it. And I'll tell you, that may not be like any taco you've ever seen, but that is a memorable mouthful.